Begin transmission. Hello, everybody. It's Chris, Milton, and Ben for episode 195 of Outer Rim Transmission. Today, we're talking about Andor, season 2, episodes 7, 8, and 9 for the third arc of the final season of this series. But hey, it's just another normal week here. May 4th has passed, and we're in the normalcy that is the current Star Wars here. So other than Andor, there's not a whole lot going on. So that's going to be our major topic tonight. But I'll throw it over to you, Ben. How you doing? Do you have any Star Wars this week to talk about?
Good. Been a good week. Just enjoying the nice weather. Finally getting nice weather out here in Ohio. So it's been nice to be outside a lot this week. And yeah, I mean the only thing Star Wars related really this week for me was actually Andor related of all things, and that was actually it was just like a funny clip from Diego Luna because he was talking at I don't know if it was a celebration or wherever, I couldn't tell, but it was like him and it was the guy who plays I think it was the guy who plays like the Imperial officer, like the main one we've seen throughout the couple seasons. Anyways, the Dedra's boss.
Pendergast.
Yep. Oh, all right. So it was like him and Diego, and they were talking at like a convention, and it was like a funny moment because, like, he's a white guy, so they were talking about how, like, actors when they're on set, they have their trailers marked with fake names, and his name was just Old Pal. And then Diego Luna was laughing. He was like, yeah, he's like, when I went to set, knowing how like Hollywood is and everything about, naming people and stuff, he said, oh, I wonder what they're going to name the Mexican guy. And he said he got to his trailer and they named him Carlos. And he was like, really? Like, of all names, you have to go there.
Wow.
And he was just laughing about it. Cause like he said, hey, you know how Hollywood is, but, I saw that and I was just like a funny little clip, just seeing Diego like react to that. And they were just like joking about it. Like I said, it was at like a con, but yeah, that was the only little thing I seen this week. It was just a little lighthearted moment from one of those conventions.
Yeah, I know he was at Disneyland or Disney World for something for recently. Maybe it was May the 4th. I don't know if there's city castles in the background.
I would say it was something. I don't think it was Celebration from the looks of it.
Yeah, it's always fun seeing those fun stories behind the scenes. Just these actors just having their stories to share. Share.
Oh,
yeah. Going over
that was my week in Star Wars. Nothing else. Other than that, just seeing that little funny behind the scenes clip.
And I know Milton, you're very busy with maybe catching up on Andor, so I'll leave it to you to discuss how much Star Wars you've been consuming in the last 7 days.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely been busy for me because honestly, like with everything going on in my personal life, I really don't watch much TV like I would like to, or stream shows. As you guys know, I'm planning a wedding, dealing with stuff. I'm trying to maybe sell my house soon, but I did catch up on the Andor episodes. I started a couple days ago, and I actually finished them this afternoon. But besides that, nothing really Star Wars related besides the Andor stuff, honestly. I mean, I see clips on Instagram, whether it's funny different things about different stories that are being told. I know my fiance likes to send me some funny things on Star Wars that's related. So actually, she did send me something last week, or actually this past week, and it was like a parent talking to their kid about Star Wars, and it was something funny that was relating to like how you raised a Star Wars kid. And I guess the one little girl was eating lunch, and she was sad, and the dad was like, "What's wrong?" And she's like, "I don't want Anakin to turn to the dark side." And like she's like a little 4-year-old kid, and she's like, "I don't want to eat now because I know he's going to turn to the dark side." Like it was cute that they were doing that and talking about Star Wars while they're eating lunch. And there was another video that she sent me of a little like 2-year-old girl, like the mother was showing her different characters, and the kid was like naming every character like little like Funko Pops, and she's like, "Oh, that's Tarkin, that's Greedo, that's 3PO," and I'm like, "Oh, Yeah, it was pretty dope. So like those are the cute videos that I've seen over the week that my fiance likes to send me throughout our week whenever we're working or like hanging out with each other.
All right.
That's great. That's one of the best parts about Instagram, I think, Milton. Like, whether her sending you clips or like you and me sending each other things, like there's always really good, Star Wars clips on Instagram and TikTok and everything. And it's always a good time. I mean, heck, Chris, I sent Milton an Instagram clip yesterday, and it was so funny because my buddy sent it to me and it was like, dude, this is like you and Chris on the podcast because it was these two guys and it was like how at the top it said how people are talking about Andor. And like there's one guy and he's like, come on, he's like, this is the most sophisticated Star Wars show ever, yada yada yada. And then like the other guy's like laying back snoring and he's like, if I wanted Game of Thrones, I watch Game of Thrones. I want lightsabers, and if it's not directed by Dave Filoni, I'm not watching. And like they were going back and forth, and I was just dying laughing.
Yeah, that sounded a lot like our conversation earlier in the week on the chat.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was dying. My friend sent that to me, and he said, "Dude, this sounds like you and Chris."
Yep. For me, well, two things. First of all, I've finally started watching the live stream of Star Wars Celebration. So earlier last night, I was painting miniatures. I have it going on in the background. Got back to that hobby. It's good to be back to that. And like my ritual has always been, I come back, I paint miniatures, and I just watch everything I didn't actually get to experience. So that's been cool going, oh yeah, I wasn't able to make it to this panel, or this interview is going on and I wasn't there, so what are they saying about this thing? So, seeing the stuff about Sigourney Weaver being in Star Wars, I didn't get a chance to catch a panel of her on the live stream, so that was neat to see that, and just different things around the convention. I was like, I never even went to that booth. That's crazy. I didn't even know that thing was there, So there's a lot of fun, and that's why it's like I'm happy that Celebration is back to 4 days again next time, because 3 days really was just not enough to, even though it was kind of a smaller scale, I would say, it just wasn't enough to experience it all. And we are gonna, after Andor ends, we are gonna have like an actual episode where we're gonna just recap all the major news out of Celebration, spend the whole hour just breaking everything down, given my experience. So we'll stay tuned for that on the podcast. But speaking of kind of a similar thing that Milton was talking about, I have this client that I train on my job. If you're not familiar, I'm a personal trainer, and I train a 16-year-old, Gen Z. And this kid, I was about to go like, maybe you should be on a Star Wars podcast, because I just brought up Andor, and then he brought up, oh, like season 1 was great. And then he was talking about like Revenge of the Sith in a way that I was like, dude, you weren't even alive when that movie came out. And he was talking about Anakin's like journey to the dark side. I was like, did you find the turn like logical, rational? And he's like, oh, definitely. And he went through like a whole essay for like 5 minutes talking about Anakin's fall to the dark side, and I'm going, oh my gosh. And then if he was comparing it to like, how George Lucas did that compared to the sequels, and about how the sequels, for the most part, they look amazing. The visual effects are amazing and great, but there's like not a lot of depth to them, at least with The Rise of Skywalker. So I was very, very impressed that and it was cool to get a look at the Gen Z perspective of Star Wars, because they all grew up with The Force Awakens and all that, but not the prequels. So it was kind of this cool moment that we had together, where it was like, oh wow, like we're getting into the nuts and bolts, and he's breaking it down the way we break it down here, even though he's not like out like of our age as a prequel kid or something. So that to me was really fun.
Oh yeah, man, that's awesome seeing like, the younger crowd. I guess it's so funny saying the younger crowd, but it's so great seeing like that generation, like acknowledging, how good parts of those prequels are and everything. And that's one thing I'll say though. Like there's always so much like talk about the sequels and issues and things with them and whatever. I will always say The Last Jedi is probably arguably one of the best shot Star Wars anything, really.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Like that movie is shot very, very well. It's just a lot of other things with it. They have good aspects, but that's cool. Like, seeing hearing that firsthand story from you, especially when it was just like something spontaneous like that versus like, like you preempting a, like a loaded question or something,
Yeah, I was just like, hey, you gotta watch Andor. He's like, oh yeah, I know season 2's out. I was like, yeah, keep watching, So it was neat to get that perspective, for sure on that. And then getting into the show proper. So, we go live every Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern. You can catch us here. You can catch us on the audio cast. Just search Outer Rim Transmission on any podcast streaming service, mainly Spotify, Apple, or whatever platform. But we love to have you guys in the chat live on YouTube because that's where we're going to be able to interact and have a fun conversation and have some goings back and forth between us all here on the show. Going into the things that came out this week, we have 2 comics. We have Hyperspace Stories, The Bad Batch Ghost Agents #3, as well as a monumental moment in comics where we have a new ongoing Star Wars #1. Star Wars issue #1 is out. It takes place after the Battle of Jakku. Luke, Han, and Leia, the full Big 3 crew, is back at it again. Han Solo's not frozen in carbonite like he was for the last 5 years in our real time when, going between Empire, Return of the Jedi. So I have that review on the website. I was going to say on the website. Yes, I mean, YouTube is a website. But yes, I have it here on YouTube, but I also have the bigger breakdown discussion over on the Star Wars Underworld where me and Matthew on our Tractor Beam show go over those in much more depth. We also have 2 High Republic era novels that came out. We have a middle grade novel, which is the final middle grade novel of the High Republic called A Valiant Vow by Justina Ireland. And then, I'm wearing the shirt, and I also have the book in my hand, and this is The Acolyte. This is Wayseeker. This is about Vernestra Rwoh and the Matrix's own Indara, Jedi, right? So this is 20 years before the events of The Acolyte. I'm about halfway through the book, and I'm actually really enjoying it. It's a shorter book. It's like not even 300 pages, which is kind of surprising for a novel, but it's doing its job. It's packing a punch for what little page count it has. It is certainly making its presence known. What I like to say so far, and I'm not done the book, but what I'll say about it is it really feels like an epilogue to the High Republic, while also bridging the gap into the era that we see with the Acolyte. And it's a really big deal because Vernestra Rwoh is a character created for the High Republic. She's one of the main characters, so we get to see that transition of her. And at this point in time, if I were to do my math correct, I think she's about 96 or 97 years old. Vernestra Rwoh at this point. For those of you wondering, yes, there are spoilers, because actually the crazy part is about the sequencing of releasing this novel is that it actually came out before the High Republic is technically over. There's still the wrap-up novel that is going to show what happens to Marchion Ro, what happens to the Nihil, and that's called The Trials of the Jedi. That's not out until June. So the fact that this novel comes out, it's so closely linked into the High Republic, there actually are characters that are referenced that are actually alive. So if you really don't want to know, like, some of these characters, if they survive that or not, you might want to hold off, but it's not like telling you, oh, this is how the battle went against Marchion Ro. It's not telling you anything specific. It's just, hey, if you don't want to know anything, maybe hold off onto this until after you read Trials of the Jedi. So that's my little preview. Come back later to the channel later, probably within the next week. I'll probably have my review up for you guys later. But yeah, for more on that, just go ahead, subscribe to the channel. One really cool news story I will mention, because I don't want to forget this, and it's pretty cool. I'm partial to the video games. There has been an announcement, a big collaboration, Lucasfilm Games and these different game publisher, game developers have been really picking up speed. I mean, you look at Fortnite. I was on Fortnite earlier in the week. I was jumping on top of a TIE fighter. My friend was flying it around. We're just causing chaos. It's absolutely awesome. Now there's been another partnership, and that is between Bungie, developer of Destiny 2. And I did speak about this before in a way where there's microtransactions in the game where you can literally be a stormtrooper. You can be flying the TIE Advance of Darth Vader that looks exactly the same, right? There's a new partnership, and it goes way beyond just microtransactions. There is a Star Wars inspired expansion coming out in December called Renegades. We don't know any information, but there is a teaser trailer and it's showing like, you know, Destiny looking dudes walking around, but they're holding DL-44s. They're holding literal lightsabers. So there's a whole new chapter in Destiny coming. They're starting a new saga, and somehow they're folding in like Star Wars looking things into this expansion, and maybe like inspired story elements, like something that would be in Star Wars. So I'm extremely excited because this is literally for me. Like this whole thing is for me. I know there's Destiny players out there going, "Oh my gosh, like they're gonna ruin the game by having like Star Wars stories in here." It's not gonna. I think they're gonna handle it well. Lucasfilm Games, you know, they put out the trailer, they retweeted the trailer and everything as well. So it's going to be very interesting. And alongside of that, if you pre-ordered the game with the Ultimate Edition, you got a Darth Vader skin for the Titan class. You got a Kylo Ren skin for the Warlock class, and then you got a General Grievous skin basically for the Hunter class. And what's really neat about these skins is I realized this after the fact. You could actually dye the armor. So I'm walking around with like the Shadow Trooper, like the black armor Stormtrooper that I found, and I also have the redeemed Darth Vader. Basically, I made the white Darth Vader armor that you would see in the Infinity comics. So I'm having a blast with that, and I also have a ID-10 Ghost. Which is basically a droid walking around with me in Star Wars, in Destiny. So I'm totally making the game my own, absolutely loving it. So those of you that are Destiny fans, be on the lookout. That expansion is coming out in December. I've been talking a lot, so I'm going to throw it over to Milton. Now we're in our Andor discussion, and I want to know, what did you think? I know you kind of seen some clips and things of the last 3 episodes we talked about. But having watched them yourselves, just give us like a quick rundown on what you thought about the episodes from last week.
Yeah. So I guess part 2 of the 4-part arc, I guess, of this series. I didn't mind it. I think it was a little slow for me. I think it was episode 4. Was episode 4 or 5 where it might have been 6. She kills the doctor. Anyways, but like I thought of the episodes, I liked how big arc went throughout. I liked how they were showing her. I don't want to describe it. Like she was clearly going through a lot of her trauma, a lot of her just turmoil. Clearly, she was hooked on some type of drug that she was taking to help her sleep.
What if that was death sticks? Do you think that was death sticks, Ben?
Hello?
I'm not sure.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry, I just had to ask because I was wondering if those were death sticks that she was taking. But go ahead.
Yeah. I wasn't sure. I know Luthen kind of referenced something when he's like, "Oh, you're still taking these," or he's like, "If you stop taking them, like the dreams come back, like louder or something." I can't remember what he said. But anyways, I liked how her arc went during those 3 episodes because it showed like where she still was from the previous trauma, but obviously at the end, whenever they kill that doctor and they blow up that facility, she kind of was like, okay, I'm capable of doing something. I don't want to just be cooped up and just feeling like I'm nothing. So I did like her progression during those 3 episodes. I thought the build up to Gorman and, the importance of like the upcoming Gorman massacre. And obviously they talked about the Tarkin massacre and all that. I thought that was solid. It needed to be there. I think more action needed to be in place with these episodes. Felt it was kind of slow at times. The pacing kind of threw me. And I never was bored with it, but there was times where I was like, okay, this needs to move. Like, we got to get this moving. Other than that, like, I didn't mind it. It was solid 3 episodes. I think it did its job to progress the story. I think the timing or the pacing wasn't great. A little more action. I liked Bix's evolution during those 3 episodes. Cassian, I mean, you're definitely starting to see why Cassian becomes who he is. And I honestly didn't mind, the whole Imperial gaming of each other, of them. Everyone's listening to everybody. I really did enjoy that. There's spies everywhere. There's devices everywhere. You clearly know this is a spy thriller type show. So I really enjoyed that. But other than that, though, it was solid. Some issues with it, but it wasn't horrible.
All right, yeah. I mean, I totally understand. I totally, it does take some getting used to, right? It's not your usual Obi-Wan Kenobi, Ahsoka like action all over the place. I think now seeing those in hindsight, it makes perfect sense why they were that way because, well, we'll get into it. Like, we really see a lot of freaking action in episode
Yeah.
8. So it's like, okay, I respect like Disney. I respect for all the executives to allow Tony Gilroy to just plan this thing out, plot it along, and be like, yeah, just trust me, we're gonna get there. Stay with us because it's gonna be pretty magnificent when we get there. But yeah, I totally understand too with the Bix. I mean, she is one of the strongest like character arcs we've seen. I mean, just get to see. Again, she's conquering all these demons and different things, and we're getting to see her get some wins along the way, which is just so nice to see.
Yeah.
What'd you think
Yeah,
of? Oh, go ahead.
no, go. You good. Go ahead. What's your question?
What'd you think of your main guy, Cyril? Do you think he's getting a better trajectory at this
I was about
point
to
when you're
say,
watching it?
I will actually say something positive about him, especially in episodes 7, 8, and 9, and we'll get into that. But I thought in 3, 4, 5, and 6, you finally get to see that he's contributing to the show in a way that makes sense, and he's doing something. And I love that they're keeping him in the dark, and you clearly see the repercussions of that in 7, 8, and 9. But he, like, the scene where he's talking to Deidre, and he's talking through, was it Portergrass? I think that's how you say his name.
Pentagon. Oh yeah.
When he's in the room with them, and he gives a report, and he's like, "Oh, good job, Cyril." Blah 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 blah. And old boy walks out, and he looks at Dedra and says, would this ruin the moment if I said this is the best moment of my life or something? And it's like, oh my goodness, like he's actually doing something. His character means something in this. Like he still doesn't know what's going on fully, but
Yep.
it's like he's part of the show. And I'm like, okay, finally. And I was like, okay, I enjoyed this version of Cyril. So I didn't mind him, especially in these last 6 episodes. And I think that's what's helped. I got to see him in these past 6 episodes like evolve
Mm-hmm.
and feel like he's part of the show for a reason.
Love that. So picking that up, I'm throwing over to Ben for your first thoughts on the current episodes we're reviewing tonight, 7, 8, and 9. Now these episodes are called Episode 7, Messenger, Episode 8, Who Are You, and Episode 9, Welcome to the Rebellion. So I'll throw it over to you, man.
Yeah, I mean, like I texted you guys and like I posted on Twitter, we've gone through 18 episodes, in my opinion, of pretty much mediocrity. But I can give Tony Gilroy props where it's due. Like, I can always point out objectively when something's good. And these 3 episodes were probably, in my opinion, the first good, competent Star Wars we've gotten through this first season and a half. So I can give him props there because I really enjoyed this arc. It made sense. It had a good balance of story, action. Also, it connected with outside things as well, which was good. And overall, I just thought it was a really good arc. Even though there are some flaws to it that we'll get into, but yeah, my initial reaction is I think it's a good piece of content.
Oh yeah. So going back to Milton, when you watched these episodes, like how did you structure them? Were you watching like one a day, or you watched one, went away for a couple hours, came back, or would you try to watch them all in a row? Like how was that for you?
I started watching them, I want to say yesterday, because I started episode 4, I think on Friday a little bit, and then literally Saturday, I think I finished episode 4, and then literally this morning at the gym, I started watching episode 5 while I was doing cardio, and it helped. Like I just powered through it literally throughout the afternoon, just because I wanted to get through it as I was kind of like getting stuff done. And it worked. Like it worked for me where I was like, okay, I can jump to the next episode. It picks up where I'm like, oh, I remember this from 2 episodes ago. That's why this character's now acting this way. I felt the structure of the show worked better for me because I was seeing them back to back to back to back.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at here. It's just like I feel like the impact of these episodes when they are watched like in the sequencing of the arc, like almost like a movie, At least I feel like they would hit me harder. I don't know. I've not watched them one by one, but go on. So what is your overall thoughts? Just quick hits. Just what'd you think of these episodes off the top of your head?
I mean, for the last three, I think
Yep.
they were the best one, in my opinion, thus far. I didn't feel bored with them. I felt that they really moved well. Obviously, you know, we all know the famous speech that Mon Mothma gives, how impactful that was. I felt that there was actually, yes, the show has stakes in it, obviously, but it was nice to see, like, oh, this is feeling like we're almost at the original trilogy, or we're almost at Andor, or excuse me, at Rogue One, especially with that opening shot of, you know, Yavin 4, the
Mm.
planet, and seeing how Bix and Cassian were, but seeing like you're clearly seeing now truly what the Empire is and what they want to be. So that was cool, and I think that was what that stood out for me in the last three episodes. Is like, this is the Empire that we know from Rogue One and from the original trilogy, and they really aren't quiet about it anymore. So I really thought these last three episodes really set up for what's going to be hopefully a solid finale, which will lead into Rogue One.
Oh yeah, no, I completely agree with that. Now with me, I guess the best way for me to describe the episodes in a nutshell is just kind of explain my feelings of watching the episodes. I think that's the best way for me to go about it because, be honest with you, this is some of the best Star Wars I've ever seen, and I'll get into why. But so that's kind of a proclamation for me, who has pretty much consumed Star Wars my whole life. For me to say that is impactful as heck. And when I was watching these three episodes the night they came out, there was like this sense of, oh my gosh, what, like this sense of just, what am I watching? This is amazing stuff. Like, I was on the edge of my seat. Okay, first it came up with Yavin, like just like you said, Millen. Yavin came up. I had to pause the TV, look at him, like, oh my gosh, this looks absolutely beautiful. Like, we're actually here. We're actually at Yavin. Like this, the dots are connecting here. We're so close to BBY. I love, by the way, how they do the BBY. I know it doesn't make sense for people. They're probably like, if they're casual people, what the heck does BBY mean? But for the people in the know, it's like, okay, that's a really cool detail. So anyway, we know we were on a timeline. But then it gets into the Gorman stuff, and I'm just like, I'm feeling this sense of dread that I don't know if I've really ever felt before with Star Wars. I'll be honest with you. You could throw Sith Lords in, you could throw different crazy things like that, but like when it comes to just like this conflict between, you know what these people are gonna, you know what's gonna happen. There's a massacre, you know what's happening, and you could see it happening, but the sense of foreboding with this music that they were playing, with just the people gathered around, you know something absolutely terrible is going to happen. And I haven't had that feeling with Star Wars. I don't even know when. Like this feeling of just like absolute pins and needles. I don't know what's going to happen. And then just when you think that's enough with that entire episode, you get it again in a different kind of way with the rescue of Mon Mothma from Coruscant. And this part with Andor, and you have these agents, and it's this completely crazy moment where like, we know they both survive, but at one point I kind of forgot because I was so embellished in the story and the stakes and everything that was so high octane. It was absolutely unbelievable. And then you get to the end, or at least towards the end of the episode, and then my emotion was absolute like sadness, like seeing and experiencing the message that Andor Cassian gets from Bix. That message, it kind of reminded me of the Galen Erso message to Jin with the hologram and things like that from Rogue One. But it became a tragedy because you're going, oh my gosh, like this fate of Bix to me is worse than her getting killed off, because just the thought of her now when I'm watching Rogue One, she doesn't know that. Well, maybe we'll find out if she finds out somehow, but it's like she realizes that there's going to be no more future because he's going to die. And what is the thought in the back of Cassian's head when he sees the Death Star and he sees the destruction on Scarif coming for him and Jin, and they're embracing? And I'm going, oh my gosh, this is making me emotional talking about it, man. I'm like, this is the ultimate part of Star Wars. I absolutely love this. And like, freaking, at that moment in time, when one person leaves somebody's life, Bix is leaving his life at that point. Then another new figure comes in to replace Bix, essentially, and that is K2SO. And it's like Star Wars is always so good at going from this sad moment where you're at your absolute lowest, and then they bring in hope into the story, and you get to see K2SO come alive, and it's like this magical moment that's also humorous when Alan Tudyk is saying like, "Are you pointing this gun at me?" I'm like, "Oh man, this is just what I need right now." After I have tears in my eyes and I'm going, "Oh my god, this is so sad," and that's how the story ends, and that's the best way I could describe my initial reaction. Is not explaining the plot or the characters, but my roller coaster of emotions from episode 7 to episode 9. And that's why I'm giving this a 10 out of 10. I'm not even going to wait for it. It's a 10 out of 10. Some of the best Star Wars I've ever seen. And I can't wait to talk about the details because, man, oh man, this was awesome. And that's where I'm going to head.
I don't think I'm going to go that far with 10 out of 10. I mean, it's definitely of the 9 that we've gotten thus far. It's probably the best 3 episodes of the series. Now, next week could be different. But I will say this is from episode 7 to 9, it was a strong through line. And it was the most consistent storytelling and probably the most entertaining of the 3 episode arcs that we received thus far. I mean, again, I'll let Ben go and chime in, but I just felt that from 7 started until the end of 9, I felt very invested. I'm like, okay, I now can't wait to get to the finale. Like, I'm looking forward to the next 3 episodes and how this is going to completely tie into Rogue One.
Yeah, I mean, I can bounce off of your guys' points there. I think for me, the strong part about these episodes are, of course, like you mentioned, Chris, like the characters, the stakes, where they head off to, what we know about happens with Cassian and Bix and everybody. But I think the reason why these episodes work so well just have to do with, I think, the pacing. I think this has been the best pacing of any of the episodes in general in the entire series, because like you don't have any moments that just sit and drag and drag and drag, and in my opinion there's a lot of that throughout the whole series as a whole. So like I think with these episodes being so focused on the like basically the direct mission that's going on right now, like whether it be the stuff on Gorman or the stuff in the 9th episode, I think the reason these episodes work so well, it just has to do with the story actually being tight versus like, being stretched out and like, we're lingering with this character, this character, this character. Like now, these episodes, the characters are actually, put into action into what they're doing versus like getting drug out scenes of like Cyril with his mom having breakfast or like things like that. Like we're actually getting well-paced Star Wars, and like that's one thing I can say too. Like I harp on a lot of the pacing through this series. I can't put that all on Gilroy just because he didn't direct all the episodes. That just like goes on the direction of the directors for each episodes, but the direction for these 3 episodes were really well because like they were just paced well. You didn't linger too long on a single scene, which in my opinion is what makes Star Wars feel like Star Wars, is good pacing.
Well, yeah, I mean, as George puts it, right, it's faster, more intense.
Yeah.
This show at points can be opposite of that.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I think that's the good, the really good part about these episodes, and I just think I just think it was just really well done, especially I guess the 8th episode, but the 2nd episode of this arc, I think that was, really well played out. And like you mentioned earlier, when you were saying about the music and the chants and stuff, like the build up to what happens in the 8th episode, I think was really nice within that episode itself.
Oh yeah. What we did last week was I talked about the gap of time of a year. And again, I think that the team nailed it with this as well. I like how, apparently Cassian has been wounded. There's like some stories that have been told. And like they're there on Yavin. They just pick up on Yavin like nothing's happened. Like they've been there for a while. And again, it's one of the reasons why I like Andor. Just seeing like this simple life of people, like, oh, they're living in their little house in a jungle, and you like hear all the different noises like you heard like from A New Hope in the background, different things like that. And it's this stuff, particularly with the Force healer, was something I never expected. Like, oh my gosh, they actually injected a little bit of mythology into Andor, which is something we haven't seen yet before. I mean, we've gotten hints of stuff, I think. When I was they've gotten Rakatan Kyber crystal. I guess that kind of leads to the Force in a way with the Kyber crystal. But anyway, what'd you think about the healer and that kind of thing injected into the story, Milton?
It wasn't unusual. It didn't feel out of place. I felt it was fine. It was. I mean, we got it. I mean, it makes sense because like the Jedi are still important to this universe, and I'm glad that they didn't really reference the Jedi in this. I think that would have overshadowed it. I think that with Star Wars, there's always a higher power, which is the Force, and people reference that all the time. May the Force be with you. It's going to start being referenced as we get more and more closer to like the cinematic universe of this timeline. So I'm not surprised that we got something like this, and I felt that they used it appropriately because we do know Cassian is going to be a very integral part of this rebellion, especially with them winning their first battle. So I think it was fine.
Mm-hmm. And then we catch up with General Draven, Ben, and seeing this guy is giving Cassian a hard time of trying to get out of there. We know their relationship in Rogue One, so it was cool. Like this is just another indicator, man, of like, hey, we are just steps away from Rogue One at this point.
Oh yeah. It's good seeing characters like him, and the other characters that we get spread out throughout. There's like, what's his name? Not Jimmy Smits, but Bail Organa. Different characters like that throughout this. I think, like you mentioned, Milton. It's kind of like getting closer to the cinematic universe. So it's, so you have to include those types of characters, really. So I think it's a nice way to connect to Rogue One. And yeah, I mean, it makes sense. It would make less sense if they would have just put Rebel Officer number 22 or something. You know what I mean? Just some random guy. So it's good they put him in there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, oh yeah, for sure. So I really enjoyed seeing Yavin once again. And of course, like the second part of this episode, we'll talk all about Gorman now because there's so much to break down. You have Cyril there, you have Dedra there, you have Cassian there. One of the parts that really made me smile was when Andor first gets there and he's talking to the concierge guy, and the guy tells him rebellions are built on hope. And I was like, oh, they injected that line that he told the guys on the ship, and then Jin told it to the other guy. Like, it's cool to see the origin of something like that. So it's better than a cameo, but it's a fun little nod of saying, hey, this is where there's all sort of rebellions. That's what you don't have to be a general to be recognized as part of like this brilliant rebellious guy. It could have been just this guy that just happens to look the other way when he sees Cassian, and he really knows what Cassian's up to. He just kind of looks the other way and lets him in. Like, just those little acts. And we see that in, I think, like the Bad Batch and different things like animated series of like those smaller characters that don't have those big climactic moments, but it's all because of them and those small little actions that they take. The rebellion, the Rebel Alliance would never exist without them. So that was just a cool moment.
Oh yeah. I think that was a cool moment. Now, I will say I don't think cameos are bad as long as they're used well, which for the most part they have been used well with Star Wars.
Yeah.
But I do think that was a nice little line to put in there, especially like we mentioned. It's just like getting closer to Rogue One, so it makes sense like something like that would be in Cassian's head versus like something from like 10 years ago or something, you know what I mean? Something like a long time ago. So I thought that was a nice little nod to Rogue One.
Mm-hmm. Going back to Cyril, Milton, I want to spend some time talking about him. What did you think about the resolution to his character arc?
I guess I have two responses to that. Um, One, when it comes to his place. Well, let's look at it back up. So his relationship with Dedra, I want to talk about that. This is part of my development with this character. I'm actually surprised how much I actually was rooting for those two to be together now. Because I know in season one I thought it was BS. I thought it was straight bullshit that he was even doing her. Like I thought it was weird. But now that I see how their dynamic was going from episode one to I guess his final appearance in nine, spoilers, it worked for me, and I really enjoyed seeing their relationship because I truly believe that she actually did really like him. I think she
Mm-hmm.
actually loved him honestly because you could see her reaction when he got killed. Like
Mm-hmm.
when you realized he was dead, she was like devastated and she had to get herself together. So that made me appreciate him, especially this season, because clearly Tony Gilroy and the writers made me believe that their relationship was something and that it was real and it meant something to them. And it was very integral to see how their development went. So I think that was important regarding that piece of his character. As for his overall involvement with Gorman and his role as a spy for the ISB, I truly think it worked. I think it worked, and I loved how he felt betrayed by Dedra. He's like, "Hey, like we're supposed to be in this together." She kept saying that, and you don't want to like give me the whole picture. And then he feels like he did something wrong because I felt like he was all about the insurgency. I think he sided with those people, or he felt something for them,
Mm-hmm.
especially how he reacted at the end. Um, and it did surprise me that he choked out Dedra, or at least wanted to, or he was doing that to her because he's like, you didn't keep me in the loop. So I appreciated how he wasn't just this cornball of a character who was a mama's boy. He actually cared. He actually wanted to be something important. He wanted to feel like he was a part of something that meant something. And I felt that he felt betrayed whenever he's like, "Why didn't you give me the full picture so I can make my own choice?" Like, I feel like he wanted to make his own choices, but people kind of hid it away from him, which forced him to kind of like be a puppet master in a weird way, or be like the puppet in this whole game of like spies and stuff like that. So it worked for me, and I'm glad that he went out the way he did. I thought it was very telling how they kind of reverted him back to his original character when he faced Cassian, and he's like looks at him and Cash is like, "Who the hell are you?" And you can just see his face. He's like, "Wait a minute, like you don't remember me? Like you caused me to. You're the reason why I'm here. Like think about that. Like you're the reason why I'm here." And for him not to remember who he was, like I felt so bad for Cyril. I'm like, and damn, like you lost your job and you're doing this because of this guy, and he doesn't care about you or he doesn't remember your face. Like I felt bad for him at that moment. I really did.
Yeah, this is one of the best like examples of why the long-term storytelling in this show works so well. And it might seem plotting, it might seem slow, but it's when you get to the brilliant turn of characters, such as this Cyril character, who we all thought was just most of us thought was just useless and like wasting screen time. But it's because of all those little things that happen. He ends up being a pivotal catalyst, and I can guarantee you that without this character, half these events probably wouldn't even have happened, right? Like, and I can see now, like you said, Dedra's got this visceral reaction to the death of him, and maybe that's gonna cause her in the next block of episodes to do something drastic because of like the memory of him now being killed, or we don't know that. So there's a lot of different complexities, and like that's the crazy part. Like Cyril ended up having this moment where he could have walked away from it all. He could have probably survived. He could have like been out on his own, done something. He was becoming like level-headed in a sense where he woke up. He woke up to what was happening at that point when they do the 360 shot. He's in all the chaos and it's like okay, and he's there and he's there. But then he literally reverts back to the whole reason why he just like snaps out of it to go try to kill Cassian, and it's because of that and that shot in his heart where it's like, wait, you're the reason why I did all this and you don't even know who I am, like, and then he gets killed. Like that is such like an Andor thing. Like he just gets killed by this guy that he was like working for, but this like little rebel guy, and like his life is over. It's like that's what happens with kind of like Cinta. Like she had this amazing like storytelling, and then she just gets killed by a stray bullet from this other guy. Like that's like it looks at like life. I feel like with Andor, and it just like life is precious, and it could end at any moment, and not everybody gets like the heroes like the grand heroic like turn of events, and I thought that was brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, I think even almost more than that, I think it's just the nice part about the entire thing with Cyril is, it just shows if you're like a low level person in the Imperial in the Empire, I mean, they don't care. Like they don't care about who you are or what it is. It's just getting the mission done, and it doesn't matter who's going to be a cost. So, I thought that was a good representation of it, because like it's not like Cyril was some high ranking Tarkin level character, so you didn't need that big villainous death like you would like with even Krennic in Rogue One, for example. Like you don't need that sort of big scale of death, because at the end of the day, like he's just he's pretty much in comparison, like what like a local city cop would be to our federal government, basically.
Yeah, true. I love the build up though. I want to talk a little bit more about the build up. Like, we are Gore, the galaxy is watching, we are Gore. Like, this is again like the relevancy of like protests and all this sort of thing. It's just like Star Wars has always shined a light at what's happening, and kind of done that in its own way. And I feel like Andor again just kind of nails it. But just to see these people, it all comes to a boiling point. I just like the way it progressed. Like, and you guys both said the pacing of it all. Just constantly like building it. Even the simple thing of like seeing the TIE fighter just like go overhead, and the sound design in Andor has always been great, because the TIE fighters we've seen 100,000 times, but for whatever reason in Andor they feel like they're a new terrifying threat that we've never heard before. It's just the way it's presented to us. It feels very visceral and very just, oh man, this is not good. And then like hearing these people like basically do their equivalent, I guess, of like the national anthem, it just gets like really dark. And like, oh gosh, like these poor people, they got to get out of there. I was like screaming, like, and then one guy is trying to get him out of there. He really feels like something's happening, and it fails. I just thought it was great. I absolutely thought it was captivating. And then you get different moments like the KX droids walking in and getting to see the full power of a KX droid just completely throwing somebody about 50 feet. And they don't cut the camera at all. Like, it just shows the impact. Like, sheesh, this is crazy stuff here. So, I mean, what did you guys think about the KX droids?
I mean, they made them seem like they were the Terminators. I mean, it was, they made them a threat. They made them scary. It was like, oh, like I actually was shocked when them just showing the way they were just throwing people around and killing them left and right. I was like, oh, this is very much like Terminator 1. I mean, there's no other, in my opinion, there's no other way to explain that. They actually made K2SO robot types look like there's a reason why, like they're highly valued, or like they're kind of like that last resort, So I'm like, okay, this was perfect. I love how they used them.
Oh yeah, I completely agree. I thought it was done really well. It was nice getting to see them in action, because we've seen K2 in action to a degree in Rogue One, but that was more just like against stormtroopers and whatever else, versus like what their full capabilities were. So yeah, I thought it was really good, and I mean, you knew it was building up to something like that. I didn't know it was going to go. I didn't know where they were going to go with it, if it was going to be stormtroopers or KX droids or whatever. So that was like I mean, not a good surprise for the people, but a good surprise. They showed those robots in action versus just like a squad of stormtroopers coming in and just gunning them and stuff. So like I really thought they did a good job of showing like the full capabilities of what like that technology is, and also like the capabilities of what K2 has, like because we see him do what he does in Rogue One, but maybe now in these final 3 episodes we'll get to see his him in more him in another important mission with Cassian potentially.
And speaking out about the stormtroopers, I still got to give them credit because something about Andor and the direction, the camera work, and the sound effects always makes like the shootouts just seem a little bit more intense than a lot of the other Star Wars I've watched. I don't know if I could put my finger quite on it, but like when like just the rebels just start taking out the guns out of their trench coats and just start returning fire and all, it's just like it becomes like Saving Private Ryan in Star Wars. It's like, I mean, this is the same guy that made Rogue One, so it makes perfect sense why it feels that way. It should feel that way. But I always like to give that credit because it's just something about it just feels more real in a sense. That's kind of something I can't explain.
Yeah, I mean, I think that probably has to come from the angle of the characters you're dealing with, really, just because it's like, in this show, it's more characters like, more side characters and smaller characters in terms of scale, versus like, when we've seen characters before dealing with stormtroopers, whether it be in Rogue One or the OT or the sequels or whatever. It's always from like a Jedi's perspective or Han Solo or like, more of a higher scale character versus like, an innocent civilian level, level character.
Mm-mm. Yeah, so Gorman, I'll never forget that the whole arc of this story. And moving on to episode 9. First of all, I appreciate this. I really appreciate this because episodes 1 through 3, episodes 1 through 6, we get the climax of those block episodes in the final episode of them. But then we jump a year, and sometimes I would have liked to spend more time with the fallout of what happened, because they did that really well in their season 1. I think it was with the Aldhani heist. There's an episode that's like a single episode that comes out after. I think it's called The Announcement. And they deal with, the PORD and all these things that the Empire immediately puts into effect because of what happened with all this money that's been missing. And it just shows you like, oh, this is a cause and effect. And we get that with episode 9, Welcome to the Rebellion, from the Coruscant aspect. And let me back up a minute here, because, oh my gosh, I loved the propaganda stuff that they had with the Empire, with their kind of publicity, their PR people, with the holocams, like spinning it. So like exactly what Dedra was saying. She's like in that episode 1 of season 2, like they're just trying to create like a militant insurgency to like make the residents, like make them the bad guy. And it worked because you're seeing all these reporters going out there like, the insurgencies are highly weaponized, and at that point, they didn't even have any guns. Like, there was nothing, like, violent about these people. They were just singing. And it just shows you the war machine of the Empire. It's not only the violence, but it's just spreading of the false information and the propaganda and all this kind of stuff. And then it opens up in episode 9 with the same BS of the people on Coruscant and the Senate saying the same old rhetoric of like, oh yeah, these people deserved it, the Empire stopped it, all this kind of stuff. So I liked that. Going to a hot button topic that I know people, including myself, were a little confused by in last arc was a recasting of Bail Organa, and Benjamin Bratt, I feel like crushed it. After the first like couple seconds of him speaking, I forgot that it wasn't Jimmy Smits for a minute, and I was just like, this is the character of Bail Organa, and what he's saying makes sense. Like, it really is just like this character transition. I'll throw it over to you, Ben. What did you think of this recast?
Yeah, I mean, I think I will start, like I said earlier, I have all my critiques of this show, but I will give Tony Gilroy credit where it's due. And he did say in like a follow-up interview after last week's arc, the reason he introduced him in that one scene last week was just to get people ready for him to have a bigger expanded role in this arc that we're talking about now. So it's good that like he planned it that way because he said he didn't want a knee-jerk reaction like where everybody was focusing on the recast this entire arc versus or this entire last episode versus just focusing on what was going on, and it gave him a week to process it. So like I will give him credit there. And I do think it worked that way, like because it let people get used to it a little more versus like, because I mean, if you would have cut out his stuff from last week and put it, left the episode exactly how it was this week, probably for a good portion of this we'd be like, okay, like I'm getting used to it, getting used to it, getting used to it. It would probably take you half the episode to get used to him being Bale versus like focusing on what was going on. So I think that was well done, and I think Brad's performance was good. Like you said, it was believable. I think he had like the mannerisms of the character down pretty well, and yeah, I thought it was really well done.
Okay. Yeah. As far as Milton, what were your thoughts on him as well?
I honestly I knew about the recast, but I forgot about it until I saw it initially. I think Ben makes a great point. I think Tony did a good job at, getting the fans to say, okay, this is Bail Organa. And again, maybe Jimmy Smits had a different schedule. I think that's what the
He
reason why.
was filming on Dexter.
Yeah. And so he can't, I know he's a big part of that show. I'm actually rewatching Dexter now, season 3. So I know he's a big part of that show at that time. And look, I never could envision anyone else playing Bail Organa. I mean, I know they brought back Jimmy Smits for some of the animation that he's done in the past, which is great. And look, this is only for 3 or 4 episodes we'll have him as Bail Organa in the entire Star Wars universe. So I'm okay with it because we'll literally get him back in Rogue One, when you go and watch this movie next. And he clearly was part of Kenobi, Revenge of the Sith, the animations. I understand. I'm okay with it. I thought Benjamin Pratt did a good job. Honestly, like Benjamin Pratt could have played a younger version of Bail Organa. That'd be great to see. But I enjoyed it. I think it was well done. I think the character felt consistent. That's the biggest thing. It felt like Bail Organa. It wasn't like some completely different character out of nowhere. It was him. Like that to me, that was Jimmy Smits. He just maybe had a makeover. That's all.
There we go. Big thing with Mon Mothma. What I really enjoyed about her, this is like you have heroics in Star Wars, and you commonly think about heroics in Star Wars of like, Anakin and Padme and Obi-Wan like standing up to the Separatists at the Petronaki Arena, and they're having this courageous battle where it's all 3 of them. Mon Mothma fights her battle in this episode in a whole different way that is just as exciting, if not more. And that is literally going into the Senate to denounce the Emperor of the Empire, knowing all full well that she is absolutely going to be screwed when she delivers that speech because no one has dared do that before. So the fact that she is doing that in the first place makes her one of the bravest characters in Star Wars. And I absolutely love to see that through the lens. And just, mentioning genocide in Star Wars is kind of a loaded term, but it's neat to actually see them go that far. And I think the speech in general had such substance, and it really means a lot in our life right now, and as well as the Star Wars universe. So absolutely amazing. But then it's the whole after effect of, there's these agents that are Bail Organa's, and one of them is corrupted and working for the Empire, and who is it? And I think the pacing there was great, seeing that, and just the wonderful setting. I think they were filming this in Spain, I believe. So it's just, great architecture feel to everything in the Senate and the Senate apartments or offices and all that sort of thing. So what did you think about this whole sequence, the stakes and the suspense of it all? Ben, I'll throw it to Ben. Or
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Milton.
I was about to say it worked. I mean, it definitely seemed. It didn't seem out of place. It worked, and look, Mon Mothma is one of the integral pieces of the rebellion. Obviously, she is the leader of the rebellion in so many ways. And I feel like it worked, and it was nice to see that. this is what we needed. Like the Empire needed someone to challenge them. They needed that quote unquote that spark, as we know from the Last Jedi. They needed that spark to ignite the flame of rebellion, and she did that. And this is how we're now going to start seeing a full-fledged rebellion come together. I mean, people of Coruscant, people of the universe needed to understand like the Empire is out of line. They're out of pocket, and
Mm-hmm.
she needed to check them. And I think that Bail Organa did his part in the sense of saying, "Hey, like you're right, we need to speak up. However, you need an ally within still. So I'm gonna allow
Yep.
you to want to do, but I'm still gonna be here working behind the scenes to assist you." And I thought that was beautifully done. I can never stop looking at what's her name? What's her first name?
Evil Riley.
Yeah, dude, she's gorgeous. Every time she's on the screen, she's captivating. And it's not just like her beauty, it's how she commands the character. I think that's why I'm so into her and how she portrays Mon Mothma, because I truly feel like there's no other person that can play her right now. She embodies everything about that character. She embodies everything that Padme represented. She embodies everything that Leia's going to represent. And it's like, yes, she's a perfect figure to be the face of this rebellion and to push it forward. So I really enjoyed what we saw, and it'd be nice to see. It'd be nice to see what Palpatine was thinking when his broadcast was going on, because he's probably thinking, "Oh shit, like this is someone that's really like put me out there, and it's gonna be hard to take her out."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have Connor Williams in the chat. Mon Mothma is so well realized in this show. I'm so happy that Genevieve O'Reilly is finally getting her flowers after being cast in the role for 20 years. Incredible. Yeah, it's so
Yeah.
cool. Again, like I don't know if a lot of the viewers know about the story of just her being cast as Mon Mothma and cut deleted scenes in Revenge of the Sith, and then she becomes does the voice. I think the voice for a few of the animated appearances and Rebels and whatnot, and Rogue One, and here we are today. So it's just it's a crazy trajectory of this
Right.
actress that has held on to this role and just has been able to really capitalize on it in the last like 10 years.
Yeah, and
Oh,
I saw something that she talked about the other day. She did an interview. She's like, my scenes were cut from Revenge of the Sith, and she said, looking back on it, she's like, they should have been cut, because the impact that it has now on the universe of Star Wars, it makes it better. Now, do I disagree with her fully on that? Not necessarily. I think we could at least got a shot or two of her in that movie. I mean, look, Bail Organa was in episode 2 and 3, and his character is not less diminished by being in Rogue One, nor being in Kenobi, and obviously Andor. I felt maybe a scene or two with her in Rogue or in Revenge of the Sith would have strengthened her character moving forward, because then we would be like, okay, she's carrying that torch from Padme, because this would have been Padme if she didn't die. Like
yep.
we know, like we know Palpatine. There's no way Palpatine could have been able to do what he's doing if Padme was alive. And I think Mon Mothma's character really
Mm.
took a lot from Padme and is just taking the ball forward. So I think her character is such integral to the rebellion, and is such integral to challenging the Empire.
I absolutely love that. I never really thought about it that way, right? Just the connection of how close they were, Bail, her, and Mon Mothma. You had the what has it been? The delegation of the 2000 or something like that.
Yeah. Yep.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I think her character was done really well in this. Like you mentioned, I agree with everything you said, Milton. I think her portrayal of the character is done really well. Just the way she talks about the character, the whole sequence, I think was great. I think it was nice how they ended the speech off, like her saying the monster is coming for us, Emperor Palpatine.
Yeah.
That whole thing, like I thought that was a good touch and like good nail on the head of the whole speech. I thought that was done really well. And again, like this might be my most complimentary episode of Tony Gilroy I've ever talked about. But props to him for this week. Like he was talking about those episodes, and him and Dan Gilroy, his I'm assuming brother,
Yep.
they they didn't hold back. They admitted they retconned Rebels. Like they literally said that in an interview. Like Dan Gilroy said, "Do we have to follow the speech and like the events that are in that effing cartoon, and you know they acknowledged they were retconning it. So like I even though like I'm critical when it comes to like this whole thing with canon and this back and forth of how important canon is, but I appreciate them not. I appreciate they didn't like go and do some weird excuse making campaign and being like, well, if you look at it from a certain angle or whatever, you know what I mean? Like they acknowledge they did it, so like I can give them props for that versus like making some long-winded weird excuse. And I think it worked out well. Like I can not be a big fan of retcons, obviously, but the thing is, if they're done well, which in my opinion this was done well, then I'm all right with it. Like this was done fine. Speech was done fine. The way Mon Mothma escaped was done well. And then, they still referenced, even though like they did do this whole thing, at least they still like referenced Gold Squadron and stuff.
Yeah.
So like, there was that. So like, hats off to them for still doing that, even though they did full blown retcon it. I appreciate that they still like at least semi connected to Rebels.
Well, here's the thing. Speaking of which, like, it doesn't mind me. Like, there was a speech that was delivered in Rebels that denounces the Emperor and causes her to be on the run. It's the same end game. It's not like, oh, some other thing happened to spur that on. It's just the speeches were worded differently. It's like no big deal. It's almost like the same thing with Bad Batch and like Kanan Jarrus and he wasn't exactly like doing this thing with these troopers, and that was like kind of not that big of a deal. And that's somebody I've read those comics. That didn't bother me that much.
Yeah. Well, I'll jump back in on that real quick. So I think the big thing about that is like when it comes to canon, it is like Dave Filoni said about all of this stuff before. Like, he's talked about it, even, when he worked with George, and even now, like, he talked about this, it was probably about 3 years ago, it was in an interview. He mentioned how, like, when it comes to, like, Star Wars canon, like, sure, there's canon or, however they want to call it. But at the end of the day, like, if there's inconsistencies with some of the stories, it's just stories getting told from different points of view, versus, like, this, what we're seeing is exactly what happened. These are just stories that are being told to us. And, like, they may not be the 100% actual event that happens. And, like, in this case, there's the events in Rebels, there's the events in this show, and like, say if this was all real, it's probably somewhere in the middle.
Yeah. Unless it's the K2SO one-shot comic where that is completely erased now.
Well, Chris, here's the thing though. Okay, so that's another thing too. That's what I was going to get to. Like, I really harp on like some of these retcons because it's like, okay, what are we doing here with all this stuff? But the thing is, like, they've already, like, you can kind of do a weird headcanon with that. Because you can say, and I seen someone post this, it was just like an Instagram clip, and like they were talking about that and the problems with it. But you can actually kind of headcanon it, because think about it this way, guys, like the K2SO comic is 100%, like you said, obliterated and retconned completely. But the way you can like weird headcanon this is just think of it like what you see in that comic is like K2's cover-up story of how he got with Cassian versus the whole Gorman massacre being how he paired up with Cassian. Like maybe that's their like cover story for what they tell people.
That could be. Yeah, that could be from their perspective. Yeah. And speaking of the Rebels connection, I actually watched the Rebels season 3 episode called Secret Cargo. It does link up exactly with this show, because what happens in that one is they're trying to, get the Mon Mothma out of there. She's already on a cruiser and exits hyperspace, and the Ghost crew picks her up, takes her to Tatooine, and then she gives her big proclamation of the Rebel Alliance being created, essentially, and then Dodana and all these other Rebel leaders like appear out of hyperspace at Tatooine. So what's cool is like that story still works. Like it's absolutely like watch that episode and then go watch the Secret Cargo episode. They link up perfectly. So I'm happy about that. That's really cool. as far as the overall vision, the overall scope of this story, when you look at it from a macro level, why is this show? Well, why is this show called Andor if we're getting half the story on Mon Mothma? I'm happy that these two characters finally link up, because now it justifies it for me a little bit. Not that it didn't before, but the idea, like, we had to know all this information about Mon Mothma to show her actual importance to the story, so that when Cassian Andor finally has that mission to where he has to go rescue her, like, it is that much more important because you know what's on the line. You've seen her character, what she's been through, all the tragedy, all this tribulation. So you get that extra bit of punch. And then that's it. You know, this is the biggest moment in the rebellion, is getting Mon Mothma out of that place, because it all ends. If she gets captured, it's over. Like, they're going to find all the secrets. They said they're going to interrogate her. She's not going to be able to withstand the kind of torture and everything they would do to get that information out of her. We would never have A New Hope without that. So just the ramifications of that, seeing that, and then just seeing the story really come together full circle, it just goes to be like, I don't even know what this story could have ended there, and I would have been happy. And the fact that we're getting 3 more episodes where I have no idea where those 3 episodes are even going, because now Gorman's dealt with, we dealt with Mon Mothma getting out of there. I've looked at the trailers again. There's like nothing from the trailers I think that we haven't even seen at this point anymore. So like, I'm excited, because looking at the future, it's like, oh man, we're going into the mystery zone here with what's going to happen next.
Yeah, I think the big part about all of this, like, you know, you kind of mentioned it there in your monologue. I think the big thing about it, and Milton, you might be able to chime in on this too, is like, you know, we were discussing it a little bit during the week, Chris. Like my criticisms with the show. I think what they should have done, like you mentioned earlier this week, was they should have named this show like Rebellion something, not Andor, because like, if it was more like a general rebellion type show versus naming it Andor, I think it could have potentially, I don't know, maybe like been received potentially a little better by some folks, just because, like, you know, I mean, heck, half the show, like Andor, you know, or half the first season, or even in parts of this season, like, you know, Cassian feels like he's taken a backseat to a lot of the other characters, where he's just kind of like for the ride, basically. Versus, like, you know, if you would have named the show something Rebellion, like, you know, like you mentioned, we got so much Mon Mothma. Maybe this show should have been called just, you know, just something more general Rebellion related.
It's so funny, because as soon as you started talking about the title change, we have a commenter, Connor Williams, who literally just put out the same thought, like, hey, would it have done better if it was called like Dawn of the Rebellion or Reign of the Empire? So a lot of us are on the same brainwave tonight. But yeah, it's an interesting thing, because without spoiling anything, Marvel, their latest movie Thunderbolts, is also coyly playing around with a, let's say, a different kind of title with their movie, in hopes of maybe it affecting box office a little bit. So we'll see if that experiment pays off. But anyways, like, that there is a thought for people to go, hey, you know, would this have done differently? We'll see. I do want to wrap it up for time's sake, so I'm going to throw it over to Milton. What is your overall thoughts and score out of 10?
Yeah, overall thoughts for these last 3 episodes. Personally, I felt that they were the best 3 out of the show thus far. I felt the pacing was very good. I thought the action was great. I thought the through line was consistent. I like the politics of Star Wars. I thoroughly enjoy it. I think it's much needed, and obviously we're getting to a more gritty Star Wars regarding, you know, what the original trilogy felt like. We still have that prequel feel, but also that transition of the chokehold of the rebellion is clearly taking shape, and they are unapologetic for what they're doing at this point. And this is probably the height, or the peak heightness, of the Empire at this point, in my opinion. And I felt that the show showed that. I loved how the characters were being fleshed out, especially, you know, in the positive is Cyril. Like, Cyril's character really did it for me in these last 3 episodes, and that's shocking, because I never liked him from day one. I thought the overall through line was consistent. Mon Mothma was probably the highlight for me regarding how she's progressed over this last, you know, 9 episodes, or I guess the last couple years with the show. Overall, I felt like these 3 episodes has been the strongest, and I'm going to rate this probably a good 8.75. I'm hoping that next week I get to a 10 out of 10. I hope they finish strong. I think they've done a good job at building us up to the finale.
Yes, and Ben?
Yeah, I mean, I can echo a lot of those points. I think this arc was by far the best stretch of 3 episodes of the entire series as a whole. I mean, I guess if I put it out there this way, if the show was like this from start to finish from the first season, with just pacing alone, if the pacing alone was like this, I would probably be having this show as one of my favorite Star Wars shows ever. Like if it was just like the pacing of these 3 episodes, I think it would. I think for folks like me, it would have been way more well received. But with that being said, I think these 3 episodes, like I said, are the best of the series so far. By far the best, of course, of this season. I think the characters were done well, story, pacing, cinematography, all the stuff everybody knows about. I thought it was all done well. So for me, I gave it an 8.8, and mainly the knock on it was just like the little bit of retconning. It is kind of like obnoxious because yeah, I'm just not a huge fan of that. Like when we're preaching so much canon stuff coming from the company, but yeah, overall, it's a good solid 8.8.
Yeah, and you guys know my score is a 10 out of 10. I put it this way. I haven't felt this good about Star Wars when those episodes ended. I was happy in a way. I was like, oh my gosh, like we got this. I was engaged. I haven't been that engaged with Star Wars, like locked in on the storytelling, just in more ways than one. Just emotional roller coaster, different things I was feeling, reacting to. It was just amazing. It felt like a very complete Star Wars movie for those 2.5 hours I was watching that had such good payoff. I mean, we talk about a lot of buildup in this series, and then we got so much payoff in this episode. And I'm just really, as I said, excited to see where this goes. So, I can't imagine this show getting any better for me in that finale. I mean, there's going to be some bold things that would have to happen that I can't even imagine right now. But I trust Tony Gilroy and team to pull it through for a strong finish. And I fully expect myself to also watch Rogue One next week before we record to kind of give you guys like, hey, what does this actually feel like going from episode 12 into Rogue One? Probably won't watch them back to back, but I definitely want to fit in Rogue One. But there you go. Thanks for all the commenters in the chat tonight. We had quite a bit of activity. It seems like everybody is on the same page with us saying this is very good Star Wars at the very least. So it's really cool to see when everybody is in cohesion in the community and just agreeing like, hey, we're all excited about this thing that happened in Star Wars. Let's talk about it and let's have fun with it. That's always what I love about Star Wars. So yeah, we'll be back next week, Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern on the channel. Right now, I have my review for the final middle grade novel, The High Republic of Valiant Val. I'm working on my review for The Acolyte Wayseeker, so be ready for that. And I usually talk my usual Star Wars comic talk every Wednesday. I upload the video. We have Jedi Knights 3 coming out this week, so look out for that review. But I'll throw it over to Milton. How's it going? Give us your platforms. Just go ahead, share where you're going to be putting stuff out there.
Yeah, follow me on X at Milton Weber 7 or Instagram at Milton 7 Weber. Yeah, hit me up on both. I like to be low key, positive, and chill, talking sports, Star Wars, or just life in general, man. Really always appreciate the listeners and the viewers. So hopefully you guys have a good rest of the week.
There you go. And Ben?
Yeah, I mean, you can find me talking about pretty much the same things: sports, fitness, or Star Wars on X at Real Ben Maynard or Instagram at Real Ben Maynard.
There you go. And you can find me on X/Twitter at Star Raptor, posting my cool looks of my Destiny characters looking like out of universe stormtroopers and Darth Vader and whatnot. So go ahead, enjoy that content. But until next time, this was Outer Rim Transmission number 195. Join us next week. Thanks for watching. Enjoy the final episodes of Andor. We'll be here to break down the final episodes of the series next week. So thanks all for watching. May the Force be with you, End transmission.